Is the perfect crime truly possible? In the next decade, I will devote myself wholeheartedly to this. I will now break down all the mind-bending suspense films from around the world. Today marks my 35th film commentary, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This film is also a masterpiece by David Fincher. The 16-year-old heiress of Sweden's richest family mysteriously vanishes from a private island. The richest man's 40-year search yields no clues, but he was convinced the killer had to be someone from inside the family. Every year on his birthday, an anonymous gift arrives without fail. It was a little secret between the girl and him before she passed away, known only to those closest to them. The killer is mocking the billionaire. "Faye, I'm right here beside you. Asterisk Faye, and you'll never find me." Asterisk 40 years after a girl's disappearance. The case remains unsolved. Henry decided to go all in and brought in an outsider, a journalist named Mike, to investigate. Mike is a recently convicted investigative journalist on the brink of bankruptcy due to a defamation case. He used a report to expose the massive scandals of the Wennerstreff EM Group, misappropriation of state assets, colluding with Croatian right-wing organizations for arms trade. Wennerstreff M casually presented his counter-evidence and accused Michael of defamation, demanding compensation of 600,000 Swiss francs plus all legal costs. The Millennium magazine I founded was on the verge of collapse. Mike's recent ordeal and his life journey so far all were stolen by a girl who hacked into the computer. He sent these materials to Henry. The girl's name is Lise. She appears cold and distant, difficult to approach. Yet her mind is a precision machine in constant motion. He can breach any system and unearth any secret, yet his own life is a complete mess. Childhood: suffered prolonged trauma at age 12. I tried to erase my abusive father from this world with a bucket of gasoline from then on. He was labeled mentally unstable, placed under lifelong supervision, with no control over his finances or his own life. These two worlds, seemingly parallel lines that would never meet, because of a ghost from the past, they were forced together. Mike received a mysterious phone call from Henry Van Air, the aging patriarch of Sweden's most prominent industrial dynasty, the Van Air Group. He invited Mike to the family's private estate on Hedestad Island. The call was a plea for help, and an offer too tempting to refuse. Hideshita Island, this secluded island, not only is he geographically isolated from the mainland, but he has also drawn a clear line in his mind, separating himself from modern civilization. This is the kingdom of the Van Air family, and their prison. Henry, once a titan of industry, now wanders like a ghost trapped in his own memories. What he wanted Mike to investigate was the nightmare that had haunted him for 40 years, the disappearance of his beloved grandniece, Haley Van Yell. The 24th of September 1966, an ordinary Saturday, the whole family gathered together. After the town parade, 16-year-old Haley approached Henry in a fluster, saying she had something urgent to tell him. But Henry was tied up at the moment and simply asked him to wait a few minutes. Those few minutes turned into a lifelong regret. Just then, the only bridge connecting the island to the outside world was the scene of a serious accident. A tanker truck collided with a private car, completely blocking the only way out. Everyone on the island, including members of the Van Air family, rushed toward the bridge. Time slipped away in the chaos until dinner arrived. That's when everyone realized Haley had vanished without a trace. He never left the island, for the bridge was sealed off. He did not drown either. The water here flows too gently for a body to simply vanish. All his personal belongings in the room remained intact. He vanished like a drop of water, disappearing into thin air inside a sealed beaker. Henry was convinced that Haley had been harmed by someone within the family. Every year on his birthday, he reliably receives an anonymous gift, a pressed flower photo frame. It was a little secret between him and Haley while she was still alive. Only those closest to me know this 40-year-long gift is not a memorial. It was a cold, arrogant taunt from the murderer. He never stops reminding Henry, "I am right here beside you, yet you will never find me," as Mike stepped into the icy maze of the Van Air family. Lise was fighting her own hellish battle against another beast. His kind-hearted guardian had suffered a stroke and was now in the hospital. He was an overweight lawyer named Billman. This man epitomized the kind of evil that becomes ingrained within a system. He held the power to control Alice's life in his hands. In his eyes, there was nothing but undisguised greed and desire. He used Lisa's living expenses as leverage to force her into providing unsavory services. In that oppressive room, Lise chose compliance for the first time. This is not surrender, but a strategic withdrawal. He knew reasoning wouldn't work. To deal with someone like that, you have to speak a language he understands. He walked into Bielman's apartment with a hidden camera in his backpack, knowing exactly what was about to happen. He wants this evil to happen and leave evidence behind. That atrocity was a complete trampling of his dignity, and ignited the hidden flames of his vengeance. When he showed up for the third time, the tables had completely turned. The high-voltage current from the stun gun was the clarion call of his counterattack. Bielman, once a commanding figure, instantly collapsed into a limp heap of flesh on the ground. She tied him to the bed, and made him watch the recording of her own torture. Her voice eerily calm. Every demand he made precisely dismantled the other party's foundation of rights, hand over control of the bank accounts, fabricate favorable guardianship reports, and ultimately revoke the declaration of his incapacity. However, this is still not enough. The punishment must be seared into their very souls. Alice took out the tattoo gun and began etching the verdict into Billman's belly. One needle prick at a time. Mac's investigation was like unearthing an iceberg, on the surface. It is Haley's disappearance, but beneath lies a tangled web of a family with twisted relationships. He visited the old Sheriff Morrell from back then, and obtained the key piece of evidence, Haley's notebook. Remember these cryptic initials of women's names and those strings of numbers that make no sense at all? Like how RJ matches up with 30114. Morrell told him that over the years, he had never been able to crack the code. This unsolved case became the Rebecca case of his career, a lingering regret he could never let go of. Mike has once again tracked down Haley's brother, the current head of the group. Martin appeared dignified and sorrowful. He claimed that on the day of the incident, he had only returned to the island by train at 4:30 p.m., thus perfectly avoiding all suspicion. Afterward, Mike flew to London and found Haley, who had long since cut ties with the family. Aunt Anita. From Anita's mouth, Mike learned an important detail. Haley's childhood was shrouded in gloom. Her father, Godfrey, was an alcoholic with a questionable character. In a family where no one else held any religious beliefs, Haley was the only one who devoted herself to studying the Bible with sincere faith. This detail struck like a bolt of lightning, clearing the fog in Mike's mind. When his daughter casually mentioned the scriptures on his desk, everything suddenly fell into place for him. He rushed back to his room, flipped open the Bible, and found the book of Judges. Those mysterious numbers aren't phone numbers at all. They're actually Bible verses. RJ refers to Rebecca Jacobson, the victim in the cold case mentioned by the old sheriff. The number 30114 corresponds to a chapter depicting an ancient sacrificial ceremony. Mike immediately called to ask Sheriff how Rebecca died. The answer sent a chill down his spine.
She was decapitated. Her arms were cut off and she was burned. But all that happened in the 19...
Mike finally understood. Kelly wasn't recording a friend's call before she disappeared. Instead, she was documenting a series of murders that had spanned years. A real-life horror story scripted straight from the Bible. He was likely silenced because he stumbled upon this secret. The nature of the case has escalated from a missing persons report to a series of sadistic murders. Mike urgently needed an assistant who could help him manage massive amounts of information. At the recommendation of his cousin Henry, the name Lisa's officially entered his world. Alice's arrival was like a powerful blast of cold air, instantly shattering the deadlock in the investigation. He was no stranger to Mike, because it was his background check that ultimately led Henry to choose Mike. When Mike extended the invitation and mentioned it was a series of murders targeting women, Lise barely hesitated. In those eyes that seemed indifferent to everything, a flicker of flame, almost imperceptible, passed through. The two of them clicked instantly. Mike brings direction and the wisdom of traditional investigation, while Reese uses his unparalleled hacking skills to conquer new frontiers in the digital world. Alice's efficiency is truly remarkable. He quickly identified all the victims on Haley's list. Their deaths, each meticulously, correspond to different chapters in the book of Leviticus. The methods used were extremely brutal. Lily noticed a common thread. All the victims were Jewish. This revelation instantly sharpened the profile of the suspect. The Daniel family had two staunch Nazi members. They have the most direct motivation. Just as the investigation was making a breakthrough, the stray cat adopted by Mike was cruelly killed in a manner that felt strangely ceremonial. The body was dumped at his doorstep. This is the killer declaring the investigation must stop. Otherwise, your fate will be the same as this cat's. But this did not scare them off. Instead, it confirmed they were on the right track. The killer is on this island. The two began to take a fresh look at the photo from the parade day. Alice keenly pointed out that the lady taking photos behind Heidi was the key to solving the mystery. She likely captured the scene across the street. After a long and winding search, Mike finally succeeded in locating the woman. Then they dug out that photo untouched for 4 decades. Though the image was blurry, a figure in a school uniform caught their eye. The threat has now reached a new level of severity. While investigating near the old house where Heidi's father had drowned, Mike was struck by a sudden, unexpected gunshot. The bullet grazed his scalp, leaving behind a streak of blood. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he would have been killed on the spot. This attack convinced them they were just one step away from the truth. They split up into 2 teams. Liz obtained authorization to enter the Van Earl Group's archives. He must comb through the endless ocean of corporate documents to track down the trail of Jeffrey, Haley's father, and match it against the locations of the crime scenes. Mike then went to visit Henry's second older brother. That same Nazi sympathizer, Harold, was also carrying a camera on the day of the incident. In Harold's old photo album, Mike saw another angle of that parade photo. He pointed at the blurry figure in the school uniform. Liz made an astonishing discovery in the archives. She had gathered the locations and times of all the murder cases. A review of the business activity records of the Van Eyck Group reveals that in the first 7 cases, Haley's father, Godfrey, was conducting business at the locations where the incidents occurred. The killer is Godfrey Vanger. However, a major doubt has emerged. The last victim, Leonard Anderson, died in 1967. However, Godfrey had already drowned back in 1965. This means there's more than one killer. Godfrey's evil has found a new heir. Alice's gaze fell on Lena's file. The emblem on her school uniform was exactly the same as the one Martin wore in Harold's photo album. All the clues eventually converged like a spiderweb onto the same person. Martin Van Isle, that seemingly refined and cultured heir of the family, who was the first to support Mac's investigation, and even proactively offered his assistance. Meanwhile, Mike also got wind of Martin. He immediately headed to the other party's residence, hoping to find evidence before Martin returned. Mike slipped into the deserted mansion and grabbed a knife from the kitchen for protection. Aside from a few shotguns and a locked door, they came up empty. Just as he was about to leave, Martin returned. Mike stumbled and fell while trying to flee, leaving him completely exposed. A hypocritical smile hung on Martin's face as he invited him inside for a drink. After discovering that a knife was missing from the kitchen, the civilized mask on his face shattered instantly. "Bring your drink. Leave my knife." Martin forced Mike through the locked door at gunpoint. Behind the door was a staircase leading underground. As a cloud of mist sprayed out, Mike lost consciousness. When he woke up, he found himself suspended in midair by ropes. In a basement filled with torture tools, this is Martin's hunting ground. Martin no longer hides his true self. He confessed everything to Mike with an air of triumph, admitting his father's crimes, and acknowledging how he had inherited the legacy himself. He speaks of killing as if it were an art, a science that demands planning, execution, and cleanup. Staring at the terrified Mike, he delivers a line that cuts straight through human nature.
Like it is from yours right now. I can feel myself getting hard. You knew something was wrong. You came back into the house.
This passage explains why so many victims were easily deceived by him. Modern civilization's rules, politeness, and restraint are built on a reluctance to offend others, yet they crumble completely when confronted with pure, boundaryless malice. However, when Mike mentioned Haley, Martin's expression shifted for the first time. Even with a hint of anger, "You found her."
You killed her. You useless fucking bitch.
From Martin's reaction, Mike could tell that he was indeed looking for Haley. He had no idea where Haley was. He didn't kill Haley. Just as Martin was about to make a move on Mike, a dark figure emerged like a phantom. After Iris discovered that Martin was the murderer, she rushed back to the apartment without a moment's delay, only to find that Mike wasn't home. Martin's figure appeared in the surveillance footage. He immediately sensed something was off and quietly slipped inside. A golf club struck Martin squarely on the head. After Alice saved Mike, she picked up the gun from the ground. "May I kill him?" she asked, her eyes icy.
May I kill him?
In his world, some evils need no trial. Only an end. Ross hopped onto his roaring motorcycle and sped off after Martin. On the bridge connecting the small islands, a scene unfolds. A chase of destiny. A car accident 40 years ago shut down this bridge and began Haley's nightmare. 40 years later, on this same bridge, Lees forced Martin into a fatal crash, leaving his car wrecked and his life lost. The raging flames consumed Martin's sins. It was like a belated offering bringing solace to the innocent departed. Martin is dead. Yet the mystery of Haley's case remains unsolved. Mike and Lisa realized that if Haley hadn't died, the only person in the world who might know his whereabouts would be Anita, all the way in London. They flew to London and put on quite a show. Mike came to the door to deliver the news of Martin's death to Anita. Alice, meanwhile, was secretly monitoring all of his communications. They thought Anita would contact Haley right away. Anita, however, simply browsed online shopping sites calmly, playing solitaire without showing any sign of disturbance. Just as Lees also began to believe that Haley was dead, Mike thought of the final possibility, the most incredible one. He barged into Anita's office again, laying all his cards on the table.
Before he died, your brother hung me from a hook.
The woman before me fell silent. She was Haley, who had vanished 40 years ago. The truth was far darker and sadder than they had ever imagined. Haley has been suffering abuse from her father Godfrey since she was 14 years old. On a pitch-black night at the docks, he killed his own father, who was trying to assault someone yet again. His brother Martin saw the whole thing. He simply went from one nightmare straight into another. The day of the parade, when he spotted Martin across the street, back at school earlier than expected, Haley was utterly devastated. She knew that as long as she remained in this house, Aunt Anita orchestrated this seamless vanishing act. She helped Haley go into hiding and smuggled her to London using 2 passports. 20 years ago, the real Anita and her husband passed away in a car accident. Since then, Haley has been living under her identity, the pressed flowers sent to Henry each year. They are not the killer's taunt, but the sole solace he clings to, as an oyster in this world. Haley's story is one of survival through escape and concealment, while Lee's represents another way to endure, through fighting back and tearing down 2 girls, both wounded by patriarchy, chose entirely different paths. Haley and Henry were reunited after 40 years, but Mike didn't get the reward he had hoped for. The evidence Henry gave him about the Winslow case had long passed the statute of limitations. It was now worthless. Mike was overwhelmed by a profound sense of helplessness. Now he had Liz by his side. Alice looked at the dejected Mike. Without saying much, she borrowed some money from him and then set her plan in motion. Alice changed into an elegant suit, put on a wig and transformed in an instant into a wealthy young woman with a Swiss bank account. She used her formidable hacking skills to infiltrate Wennersterfem's secret accounts worldwide. Overnight, they cleaned out billions of euros in illicit funds from the other party. This fatal blow directly ignited the black interest chain behind Wennersterfem. The criminal syndicates he had served thought he was going to double-cross them and make a run for it. Assassins were dispatched one after another. A few days later, Wennersterfem was found dead on the street, shot multiple times. Alice delivered the most hardcore form of justice for Mike, a perfect act of vigilante revenge. He is like a knight from a world of darkness. He presented the head of the enemy to the king he recognized as his sovereign. Liz repaid the loan, then did something he had never done in his life. He walked into an upscale clothing store and bought a leather jacket for Mike as a Christmas gift. This leather jacket was his token of trying to get closer to this warm world. However, when he arrived at Mike's building with the gift in hand, what he saw was Mike and his wife embracing each other. The Stockholm snow of that moment, the words seemed to fall right into Alice's heart. He did not step forward. He did not ask any questions. He only stood there watching silently. He tossed the leather jacket into a roadside trash can, turned the car around, riding off into the snow-blown night on a motorcycle. The girl with the dragon tattoo is David Fincher's masterpiece. Every frame is laden with meaning. Every shot conceals a clue. Each character is vividly brought to life. It's more than just a gripping detective tale. It's a deep dive into human nature, a story that grapples with justice and redemption.